I don't know what compelled me to revisit the original Watch Dogs recently. Perhaps because I found myself isolating from the real world, that maybe the cold simulation of Chicago might offer some warmth and familiarity. I was hyped for this game when it released, as many were, but even disregarding the controversy around the graphics shown in trailers or the hilariously failed marketing stunts, Watch Dogs still carried a lot of hype for me personally, even in the shadow of Grand Theft Auto 5. Seriously, delaying the release of this until June of 2014 was a wise decision. I picked it up day one as an early birthday present at 18, and look, I wasn't blind to its faults or shortcomings, but I still managed to enjoy my time with it. Yet despite spending a rather formative birthday playing it, in the decades since, I haven't been able to recall next to anything of note from the experience. So I decided to pop in the PS4 revision and decide once and for all if the game was perhaps overlooked or set to the side for good reason. To put it bluntly after a replay, it's no wonder so much of the game failed to stick, because if I'm being frank, my first impressions on the characters and story, both now and back when I first played it, were underwhelming. We play Aiden Pierce, a covert hacker caught on a heist gone wrong that puts his family in danger, resulting in the death of his niece. Much of the story revolves around protecting his surviving sister Nicole and nephew Jackson from the ongoing gang wars in the city between organised crime syndicates, local militias, and a seemingly never-ending source of hired fixers who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. It's straightforward and cliche at the best of times. I don't take issue with that, even if certain character developments and twists are generically predictable. No, my biggest gripe is with Aiden as a pro-tag. I simply don't find him interesting in the slightest. He's a very one-dimensional renegade anti-hero without any of the character traits that bring someone like a Trevor or John Marston to life. If anything, he's more of a GTA 3 throwback, allowing you to project yourself into the character's situation, but without any of the moral choices that make that projection interesting or engaging. And running around in that big trench coat, I'm half expecting Aiden is going to get those dogs out in front of the entire city. So look, it is what it is. The key thing for me is always the gameplay, and while actions might not mean as much if I don't care about the who or why of moment-to-moment action, Watch Dogs, for me at least, does deliver a fun loop of mechanics versus environment. Driving gets a pass, though it does feel heavy at times, high-speed chases can be thrilling, and the map is the perfect size. A great depiction of Chicago, I assume, with enough room for a varied style of districts. The main city loop, neighbourhoods, docklands and ghettos, even extending beyond the city into more rural territory, which is greatly appreciated. I know I mentioned graphics, and of course, that was the main takeaway from marketing dogs back in the day. Comparing the PS4 version with the original 360 is night and day, but I've got to admit, even while enhanced, the daytime graphics rarely impress me here. In broad daylight, the city appears flat. There is little depth to any environment, and the lack of contrast is disappointing and does the game no favours. However, speaking of contrast, nighttime or any other weather like rain or fog is the total opposite. This game excels visually in this department at selling not just a realistic setting, but the core atmosphere being presented, which the narrative often struggles to achieve on its own. It's moody, city streets are warm under lamplight, the flicker of the moon across surfaces and dark alleyways are now a hub for vigilante action. The soundtrack, however, can be hit or miss. There are some perfect tracks that complement everything I've just said, along with your generic songs from the mid-2010s. I like that, thanks to this taking place in a modern setting, the option to listen to music while on foot enhances certain set pieces, like this one, defending our mate T-Bone using deadly Truckosaurus creations to the sound of Ministry. Oh man, that is awesome. It is a shame, however, that the soundtrack doesn't quite cover the full scope of the game, meaning that you'll be muting it before long because, man, if I have to hear the start of Invincible one more time, I'm gonna lose it. Switching songs always brings you back to the very start of a track. It's not like a radio in GTA, so jumping in and out of vehicles to grab collectibles or complete a goal before speeding off, you just get stuck hearing the same intro to every song over and over. Then other times the game's generic original score kicks in, which is quite poor, and suddenly the concept of hearing the first 30 seconds of Invincible one more time doesn't sound so bad after all. Okay, I think that's all of the face value stuff out of the way, so now we can just hone in on the gameplay loop, which, at the end of the day, is going to be the main selling point of an open world sandbox game from this era. Missions are structured as you might expect, with the story overall covering 5 different acts. Driving gameplay can be compared quite lazily to just about every other title in the GTA clone genre, so it's the on-foot missions which always held my intrigue, more so with the greater freedom to play to your own style. While firefights are almost always an option, stealth is also a critical element, which is where Aiden's hacking abilities come into play. Chicago is ruled by CTOS, the technical integration installed by big tech corporation Bloom, designed to keep the city safe, but ultimately is prone to many exploits. A large chunk of playtime will be looking through cameras, either hot swapping between them to follow a target or search an unreachable space, but more commonly to survey an area, making a plan for attack. And I think that's pretty cool. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, there is usually a camera nearby to be tapped into for that big brother feeling. It's most often used as a great way of triggering events in the sandbox world, setting off traps on unsuspecting enemies, creating a distraction so that you can sneak by, or even on the more extreme side of things, blowing up the entire power grid, allowing you to move through darkness undetected. It's really cool, and despite not being much of a stealth gamer myself, look, I didn't grow up with Metal Gear and I can barely protect my ass playing Sly Cooper for Christ's sake, but despite that, I do find the stealth focus a real treat and almost a challenge. Can I swoop in, hit my target and then slip out without triggering any alarms? Can I detach myself and manipulate the environment to complete my objective within plain sight of swarms of bad guys and get away with it? It's really a lot of fun approaching each scenario with your toolkit in the spotlight, rather than the oftentimes quicker or easier methods. We've got skill trees to level up which unlock more extensive hacking abilities such as triggering road hazards while driving for an abrupt end to a car chase, or taking a police helicopter out of the sky if your execution was more on the messy side. There are also a ton of different guns and weapon skills, but I find that side of the game rather unnecessary. Give me a silent sidearm and occasionally a sniper rifle, and I'm set for the entire game. So much of this is just fluff for the sake of comparison to other games, I feel. And it's the same for Aiden's wardrobe. There is a lot of filler here that's atrocious to look at and definitely doesn't draw attention to you. And I think that's a big problem of Watch Dogs. You can just sense the insecurities of the game trying too hard to be a GTA contender. Honestly, I did ponder it multiple times while playing what the game may have looked like as a more linear experience perhaps, leaning more into the Hitman style of complex and branching puzzle scenarios, or even the less intriguing level-to-level action that other genres deliver. But then it wouldn't be a sandbox game in the 2010s, would it? While it falls into the trap of its side content serving more as a checklist rather than a believable world, I will say that I don't mind what there is to see in Chicago at face value. We've got gang hideouts to infiltrate, which is always a favourite of mine, no matter the game. There are driving contracts, infrastructure to breach in order to gain an advantage over the city, and gain entry into private lives. Honestly, this is when the game is both at its most enjoyable, but also copying the Rockstar formula the most with some of the comedic situations you can happen upon. Accessing this and many of the big hacks throughout the entire game requires navigating pipe puzzles. Think Bioshock or countless other examples. I'm sure some people might scoff at this, but I don't actually mind these. I did get sick of it by the end of the game because they're just everywhere, though things like this are sometimes a necessary evil for conveying a concept like hacking to a consumer audience. There are several investigations to undertake across the map, all implicating the main story in some way or another, collectibles like QR codes painted across the map which need to be viewed from a specific angle to unlock extended lore, and I should also mention the vigilante jobs. Think Spider-Man open world games. We get informed of a crime and have to stop a mugging or whatever else. It's standard stuff, as long as the perpetrator doesn't just ascend into the heavens when you try to chase them. But these do tend to lack variety after a while. And finally, what would an open world game be without its mundane mini-games trying to simulate civilian life? We've got street games, chess, drinking, poker, which if you're clever is actually pretty fun to cheat the system and win big, though like most games, the balance of your bank account is rarely given any meaning or true value in the grand scheme of things. But the real funky thing the game has is augmented realities for peers to undergo. These range from parkour challenges, collecting coins retro style, going into VR and shooting demons, which is really funny, especially imagining what that might look like in real life. But the game even goes a step further into digital trips, offering fully defined alternate game modes that take place across the city. Carmageddon surviving waves of zombies on the streets, going on a rampage as a giant robotic spider tank, which gives me real prototype vibes. There is Alone, which is almost a horror experience, sneaking around with extremely sparse resources. And finally, there is this shit, where you've got to bounce around on flowers like you're on acid, platforming through the city without touching the ground. And it's fucking mental. I mean, what on earth am I playing right now? I said I didn't remember much about my original playthrough of the game. Man, let me tell you, this is my core memory of this game. And I just remember doing this and thinking, why? Look, I've mentioned that the game's not perfect. You know, there are elements that could have used some more polish, more focus, or perhaps just not have been included at all. Yet despite that, development time was still allocated to the completely off-the-cuff absurdity of these mini-games, which almost have enough content to be their own separate thing. Look, point is, it's baffling, like a lot of this game when you really get down to it. As much as I do enjoy a lot of the side content, to say it's a bloated checklist is fair, honestly, because there is a lot of doing the same thing over and over. There is little variety to shake up what we're doing outside of the main narrative. There is about 30 driving contracts which we need to complete, an equal amount of criminal convoys to intercept. It's all just go here, start, wait to do the thing, and then on to the next. I'm really surprised with how much of an emphasis is placed on invasion of privacy, that these encounters weren't at the very least initiated by these actions, you know what I mean? You snoop out an apartment and find out the travel path of a notable figure, or scan a QR code that tells you of an illegal street race. I mean shit, they could have taken that one step further and made you actually scan the QR code for real, in order to be given a vague area on the map to explore. This game did offer a companion app for multiplayer after all, although I'll talk about that a bit more later on. There is a lot of cool shit Ubisoft could have implemented here that just showcases how little the game's focus was on its actual narrative concept and theme. The reality is that this is just trying to be GTA from top to bottom. My biggest issue with the repetition side of content is that any missions which expects you to take someone down usually means that you need to actually be within breathing distance of them to do the takedown move. It doesn't matter if it's stealth or not, as long as it's done in that specific way. Maybe it's my autistic brain, or just expecting dogs to take inspirations from some of the better examples of the genres it emulates. I thought that I'd be clever. I'd lure someone into my line of sight for a prime assassination. Nope, can't do that. The issue here is the difference between a knockdown and a takedown, with the latter meaning by any means necessary. I get it, right? But the game would rather mock you by placing every non-lethal target primed and ready for a clever kill, while all of the cannon fodder seems few and far between. And now that I think about it, most of the guys that we are allowed to kill are often driving, which is obviously what all of the road hazards are for. But with how fleshed out the firepower wants to be, why is there no option to shoot while driving when even the early Grand Theft Auto games had that figured out? So if being a vigilante means kneecapping everyone, which is a mechanic that the game does recognise, why then does sniping a running target in the leg automatically kill them? It's kind of lame and really kills a lot of the sandbox gameplay that Rockstar made famous. I mean, just look at Red Dead Redemption. You've got bounties to deliver dead or alive. Sure, they're worth more alive, but the point is, the player gets to play how they like, which is where Watch Dogs undoes much of its stable foundation. And it's a real shame because the highlights of this game are pretty incredible. The plotline heading into Mission 12 of Act 2, A Risky Bid, is all about infiltrating the underworld of human trafficking and rescuing a girl up for sale. We've got to ambush a bidder to collect his car and assume his identity, play the character to get to the inside and rub shoulders with two of the biggest baddies of the entire game, and then the entire thing ends in a huge shootout. Man, it's strange. Act 2 is needlessly longer than all of the others, but god, it is the best part of the entire game. The intrigue for the world building, the antagonists and supporting characters we meet are interesting, and the stakes are so high that you're naturally invested. It's a shame then that we get sidetracked numerous times, which disrupts the flow, and for very little payoff. We go looking for T-Bone, a former CTOS developer gone rogue, to help us out, and this is where the city outskirts comes into play, and only now, which makes this all feel really tacked on, I gotta admit. We get him back into the city and then suddenly have to deal with a counter hacker known as Default, so we stop everything again to go and kick his ass. It really makes the ending come out of nowhere, only 3 missions later. The pacing is somewhat strange, which once again, I do want to like this game, but it all feels held together with tape and glue, while the industry standard was concrete at this point. To say that I didn't get what I needed out of this second playthrough would be a lie, however. It did tick the boxes of being a predictable, easy to digest experience in a genre that I love, and filled in my time with something to do. But I totally understand it being only that, turning off a lot of potential players. The thing is, by the time I finished the game, I found myself close to a platinum trophy, which led me into the online elements, which I want to touch on briefly. First and foremost, the fact that I was even able to connect with anyone still playing this over a decade past release is shocking to me, when new releases live and die by their first week player base these days. But anyway, we've got a few types of online gameplay beyond simply free roaming. There are street races, which thankfully I was able to find some matches, and you know, it's surprising to me that there was no dedicated racing mode in single player, even though you can clearly see beaten paths designed specifically for this mode. I got my ass handed to me most of the time, but the racing is passable. Perhaps the most interesting part of online play is dropping into other players' worlds to hack and stalk them. Now this is fucking cool, man. Firstly, it loads so quickly. We're placed into a duplicate of another player's current world configuration. The exact location, time of day, open world scenario, all of it. But they don't actually know that we've logged in, right? So you find your mark, start to hack them, and then suddenly they get alerted that they're being hacked. Now you need to hide somewhere while they scan frantically to try and find you before time runs out. It's a goddamn masterpiece of hide and seek implemented into a video game. As the window of discovery gets smaller and smaller, you need to be more and more sleuth about your hiding spots. And if you're successful, both players are immediately disconnected and resume play like nothing happened. But if you're spotted, then you're given a chance to escape, which doesn't count as a win, but also doesn't deteriorate your rank like facing a death wheel. It's super interesting, and I had a lot of fun doing this back and forth. The alternative is stalking, which is the exact same thing, however the player being followed is given zero notification before or after the event has occurred, which is a bit fucking creepy. Teaching kids how to stalk other people while wearing their best trench coat? It's not the best look. But anyway, the matches for this were harder to find, given that it's less intuitive, I suppose, but I was able to find another player also grinding out the trophies to help each other out, and man, that's so cool. Honestly, I don't think I've made a random connection like that in an online game since the era that Watch Dogs first released in, so thanks for the help, Liveger03, you're a legend, mate. Now, unfortunately, the one part of the multiplayer I wasn't able to test out was the companion app I mentioned earlier in the video, as it's no longer available to download. Thankfully, we've got some videos here to demo how this actually worked, and to be honest with you, it's fucking innovative. Two players would connect, one playing the game like normal, and the other playing via the app, controlling the police response. Along with being able to access all of the CTOS traps to attack the person driving, doing well would earn points to spend on dispatching additional police vehicles, and you even had control over the helicopter spotlight. This is ingenious for a game set in this world. It does seem like the plan was to host a vibrant online community akin to the thriving GTA Online, but sadly, there just wasn't enough content to sustain it. But I do want to give credit for trying something bold and different that's worth a lot of merit in my opinion. Obviously the downside to modern innovation like this is the disappointing lack of preservation. Clearly there are still some people playing online, but probably not enough to justify the costs to keep this thing running. So, what are my thoughts in the end? Well, they haven't changed since the day that I first played it. Underwhelming. Sure, I had my fun, the game served its purpose, and while I can confirm there is some good shit tucked away in here, I can't say that I'd recommend going back to it unless you really want to. I think you can just start with Watch Dogs 2, which I played a while back and was immediately more impressed with as a whole, though I would also like to give that one another ride in the future as well. Ultimately, what held the game back was a lack of identity, as just another run-of-the-mill sandbox attempt, so I think I'm gonna have to be critical here and give Watch Dogs a 6 out of 10. Which in dog years is more like a 40 out of 10, so do with that what you will. But we're not done yet, no, because we still have the DLC to check out, yeah! Some additional investigations, a new digital trip, and an entire 3-act story sequel titled Bad Blood. Firstly, we get a few more of the same kind of side missions we've already spent the last while grinding out for that plat trophy, with an additional gang hideout as well. Nothing much else to report really. The digital trip, I was quite intrigued to see what else was up their sleeves with Conspiracy. It's essentially like the movie They Live, or Bart vs the Space Mutants, where Aiden can see through the flesh disguises of robotic invaders walking the streets, so we've got to be cunning and slip past to take them all out. It's alright I guess, but definitely not worth the like $7 or $8 just to play this alone. And that brings me to the main DLC, Bad Blood, where we get to play former Bloom employee and original hacker T-Bone, working alongside a fella named Tobias, who was introduced briefly in the main campaign. Both friends are former Bloom higher-ups and need to come together in order to take down once and for all Default, that rat bastard. See, this is why the whole takedown thing shits me. I assumed that we'd already killed him. Well, no, because apparently he's still scurrying about. I've got to say that while it is still the same game under the hood, there is a much clearer focus here on delivering an A to B story with twists and turns which is delightfully unexpected. We get to explore some fresh locations on the map, including taking the boat out beyond the main playable area to a haunted house, the home to an off-the-grid institution. The best part of all is that missions have a lot more depth to them. You're far more likely to have a beginning, middle, and an end part to each objective, which is pretty good for side content. In fact, I get the feeling after a glance online that people seem to enjoy the limited story told here more than the primary game, which says quite a lot. I mean, what can I say? It's fun focusing in on some of the more interesting details rather than trying to accomplish too much. Outside of that, we do get more of the same side content like gang hideouts and driving contracts. However, there is a twist. Firstly, the online is integrated, meaning that these can be played co-op, which is a lot of fun, and I've got to give another shout out to Cthulhoops, who I ran into during matchmaking, and we did a lot of these hideouts together. But even if you choose to play by yourself, your completion of these activities is graded to earn you unlocks and perks. Suddenly, these same locations that we've already visited feel fresh, not strictly being about one type of objective. Sometimes we need to find computers to hack without being detected, or locate only a single target for assassination while leaving everyone else unharmed. Or you may also encounter caches of explosives that need to be destroyed, so it's different enough for a paid add-on. And to my surprise, the option of replaying these grants you the opportunity to try different techniques to see what works best. Not to mention that there are also new investigations to complete for additional info about key figures in the world, making it just enough to be worthwhile. Now, to say this expansion fixed the game would be hyperbole, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a lot of fun, even refreshing while being burnt out from completing the main game. But having said that, I don't grade DLCs alone, but this one is definitely worth playing the main game to fully understand. So, I'd have to say that as a bundle deal, Bad Blood drags Watch Dogs kicking and screaming into the 7 out of 10 zone, but only barely. In the end, I think I did actually enjoy my time with the first Watch Dogs, despite where it might be lacking. I mean, if you're looking for a straightforward sandbox checklist kind of game, then I'd say that it's at the very least worth a try. And hell, you stick to it and you might even find more value under the hood than I reckon most people would give it credit for. But anyway, that's the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, then consider subscribing for more content. Remember, I'm Eyed Jak, and I hope you have a great fucking day. Cheers, guys.